See these things, or we saw the binders, we saw all these things, and we look at those generational things and we're like, oh my gosh, I remember those. Oh yeah, that was my childhood. I remember folding my socks. I remember having those phones or a beeper or whatever. I remember being on a computer playing RuneScape or Bomberman or whatever you guys used to do. And when we look at these things, we get so nostalgic. And we feel like, oh my goodness, you remember that? Yeah, I remember that. I used to do that too. You had a Zynga page? Me too. And for those who don't know Zynga, it's okay, it's not important. But then when we see other people in a different generation, or when we see other people who may have grown up differently from us, or maybe who have had a different background, or whatever you want to call it, we begin to see like, man, hey, you're old. Or something that a lot of youngins like to say now is like, oh my gosh, you're a boomer. And I'm like, thank you. I'm like 5 years older, man. Come on. Or sometimes maybe even the older generation looks at the younger generation. And they're like, you know what? You know, when I was your age, I used to walk to school 10 miles over a creek fighting lions and tigers. And you're like, okay, sure. All right, grandma, grandpa, like, why are you explaining how much like you had to struggle to walk to school? And we see this tension of people. I didn't grow up that way. That's not how I live. And there's this tension that we have when we face meeting someone, maybe who has a different background than us. Maybe we have a different generation. Maybe we just have a different culture. And it's actually in that tension do we see actually a lot of turmoil. I mean, even within the church, there was a lot of turmoil because of that. There was a lot of turmoil within the church, even from older generation to younger generation and to younger generation. There was this fight of saying, like, why are you trying to change church? Or why are you trying to do this? Drums are from the devil. No one plays drums. That's why we have a cajon. No, I'm just kidding. But there's this tension that we face when we're met with someone who's different from us. And when we look at that, especially in a church, especially in what we're trying to create, and especially what God has continued to tell us, why are we faced with this much tension when we meet someone who's different from us? Or when we have an opportunity to meet or be with someone who's different. And we're on this series calling our next faith step. Because for us, we are a church plant. If you guys already know, and those online as well, we're a church plant. We just started this church, and we are excited for this coming fall, because this will be actually our very first fall season here as a church. And we're just really excited for the students coming in at UCI, for us as well, inviting our friends and family, and all these fun things. We're really excited for this season, but we know that when we invite different people, when we have different people in our church, there's going to be tension. How come they're not dressed like me? How come they don't act like me? How come they don't look like me and do the same things that I do? And then we start pushing them away just because we feel that they're different. So I want to ask this question for us today as we look into today's word, is that why should we be kind to people we disagree with? Why should we be kind to people we disagree with? Because I believe in the church, even as a Christian or whatever you want to call it, we face so many people where we actually disagree with. So then, why should I be kind to them? Isn't it better if I should just push them aside? Isn't it better if I should just leave them alone and I do me and you do you and all that stuff? Isn't that just better? It's like, no. And we're going to look. Why should we be kind to people we disagree with? And we're going to look in the story of Joshua. And in the story of Joshua, as we read last week, is that Moses sent the spies over to the promised land, and then they saw the land, and they're like, oh my gosh, what do? We can't beat these giants. And then Two people, Caleb and Joshua, were saying, no, we can take this land. And then God punishes the people for their lack of faith. But before Moses dies, he appoints Joshua to be the new leader of this nation, of these nomads. And he's telling them, he's like, go and lead the people. And then God commands Joshua, be strong and courageous, for I am with you. Don't turn away from the book of the law. Don't turn away left or right, but be strong and courageous to where I have called you. But now, Joshua's first act as a leader, Joshua's first act as being the next person in charge after this great leader led them out of Egypt, led them through the desert, his first act was to send spies into a place called Jericho. And we're going to read this in Joshua chapter 2. And it says this in Joshua chapter 2. And then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim to go look over the land. He said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land. So the king of Jericho sent his message to Rahab, bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they have come to spy out the whole land. Because they have come up to spy out the whole land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. And she said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. So she told the men, go, I don't know where they are, but they left. Maybe if you go, maybe if you look and see, you can catch them. Because yeah, they were here, but they're not here anymore. So go, look for them. And then the men, the king's men, decided, all right, they're not here. So they go outside the gate and try to find these spies. And at dusk, when it was time to close the city gates, the guards left. And when she said to them, I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly. You may catch up with them. And before the spies lay down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to the spies, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. And we see the scripture of Joshua's spies entering into Jericho. Now, if you guys are probably wondering, like, yo, the first place they checked out was a prostitute's house. You know, you're like, oh man, maybe we've got to have some questions about there. But we could have another coffee conversation about that. But usually when you entered into a land, you want to go to the place where there you'll find most information. You would go to a place where you would seem less suspicious. And of course, for entering into a city, one of the places that many travelers will go to is a house of a prostitute. And they will stay there because that was the most strategic place. But as they entered, they knew the king of Jericho found out that they were there. But then Rahab tells the king's men, no, they were here. I didn't know who they were, but now they left. Maybe you should go and find them. And as Rahab does this and shares this with the king's men, they all leave. But then she goes up to the men and tells them, I actually know who you are. You see, we heard of you from afar. We heard of when you left Egypt. It crossed through the entire land. We heard that you crossed the Red Sea, that you passed through the deserts, and the kingdoms, the 2 kings that are in your land tried to destroy you, but then you destroyed them. We have heard of your great God and what he is doing. And this whole city is melting in fear. And what she does is she goes and she tells them, please, remember me. I know what you guys are doing. I know what your king is doing, but I need you to remember me. Now, I'm not sure if this has ever happened to you, but have you guys ever had this random act of kindness be given to you? Like, you don't know this person, and a lot of times you're like, why is this person helping me? Why is this person doing this for me? Maybe you're so lucky that you were in the line or a drive-thru at Starbucks. And have you ever experienced someone ahead of you buying you a Starbucks drink? No, they're saying, oh, the person in front of you wanted to buy your drink, so they bought you your drink. And you're like, oh my gosh, thank you. Has anyone ever has anyone ever done that or gotten that? No, it's okay. It's actually really amazing. I hope that you guys do. But have you guys ever done that to anyone? Because usually, what really happens is it comes like a little train. When I remember when I got bought a Starbucks drink, I was in Starbucks in the drive-thru. The person told me, oh, the car in front of you bought you your drink. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's really sweet. And I'm like, oh, you know what? My natural tendency was, you know what? I'll buy the car behind me a drink. And they're like, you know what? Let me buy the person behind me a drink. And they're like, you sure? I'm like, why not? I mean, I was do a kindness, the person in front of me, I'm like, come on, let's push it on forward. And they're like, okay, it'll be $25. I'm like, why? What'd they get? It's like, oh, they got like 4 or 5 drinks and all these different shots and all these different things. And I'm like, dang it, I can't pull back now. I said I was gonna buy the drink, and I bought the drink even though I was so reluctant. And I was like, dang it, I got sucked into it. Oh man. But that's what kindness actually does, doesn't it? Is that when we experience this type of kindness, it kind of makes us want to repeat it or trickle it down. There's something about kindness that makes us see people in a different way. It makes us see people in a very, very special way. Because we start seeing people as people. Kindness has this special power that makes us see people as people. A lot of times we treat others like strangers. We treat others like objects. We treat others like numbers. But kindness opens our heart to see a person for who he or she really is. Because we read here, in Joshua chapter 2. And I'll read this out loud. I don't think I have it on my PowerPoint. But it says this. You see, the spy, Rahab, goes to the spies, and he tells the spies, here, now then, I know what your God has done. But now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and you will save us from death. And the spies replied, our lives for your lives, the men assured. If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land. So she let them down by a rope by the window and the house where she lived, and by the part of the city wall. And she said to them, go to the hills, for the pursuers will not find you. Hide yourselves, and in 3 days, until they return, go on your way. Rahab showed this kindness to these spies. But you're wondering, and it made me wonder too, is like, why on earth would Rahab show kindness to these people? Why? She is literally a physical enemy of these Israelites. She is a Canaanite. She is a person of Jericho. They are about to go to war. Why is she showing kindness to these people? And not only is she a physical enemy, a literal physical enemy, she is also a spiritual enemy as well. She was a prostitute. She was a person that everyone in Israel will call unclean. She is a person that they do not want to associate with. They would even say, if I'm talking to you, it would bring great shame in my life. Why would I even want to associate with you? And they would probably just kick her off to the curb. If anything, she would be the first one to cast aside. She was literally a physical and spiritual enemy of the Israelites. And she knew it too. She knew that she was an enemy. She knew that they weren't going to see her, love her, respect her, anything, because no one did. She knew who she was. She knew what she does. Why would anyone see differently from this person? Why would anyone see different from who you are? Why should anyone expect anything different from who you are? And that's probably the life that she continually lived. No one would expect greatness to come out of you. No one would express any type of gratitude that you give. No one would ever expect for you to even give a hand, a helping hand. But you see, this is what makes kindness so powerful. Though Rahab did not need to show kindness to these men, to these spies, though Rahab did not need to go out of her way to protect these people, she could have been like, guards, here they are, they're in my roof right now, so there's only one way in and one way out, so if you go up those stairs, you're gonna get them. They're underneath the blankets, don't worry. Just don't touch the green one, okay? That's my personal one, but they're right there. And that's all she needed to do, and then boom, problem solved. But instead, she decided to protect these spies, to protect these men. Because with kindness, there is something that changes in us. You see, kindness has a very special effect within our lives. You see, kindness, and I pulled this out of actually from like a little psychology study, and it made me really think about why kindness and what Rahab did was so powerful. You see, for Rahab, even though no one expected anything from her, she expected, she anticipated, she wanted something different. Even though no one wanted anything from her, she wanted something different. And she gave it first because, you see, when we have kindness and when we show kindness to others, kindness actually has this ripple effect. That when you are kind to someone, actually, when we witness it, when we see it, when we receive it, it actually continues to ripple out. We, in turn, want to be kind to someone else. That's why psychologically they say it's better to give than to receive. Because it's actually, we get these chemical in our brains that open up our happiness, our joy, is when we give and when we witness giving. And kindness has this ripple effect in our life that it even helps us flourish in our life. And it's so interesting, isn't it? That when we think that, oh, if I have to give something, why will it benefit me? If I have to give something, how does that build my life? And that is the beauty of kindness. Is that, you see, kindness isn't this tank in our life that like, oh, it's gonna run on empty. Actually, kindness is this state within us that continues to exude this wonderful word that we like to call is joy. When we show kindness, it changes our life because we allow ourselves not to judge our life based off of circumstances, but base our life because what we choose to do. Because how many times have people asked us, what's the difference between happiness and joy? What's the difference? Well, why is joy so important, Anthony? And why if we show kindness and joy and then all this comes out, why is that so important? And for me personally, the reason why I feel joy is so important, which kindness grows is because I feel that happiness is a great thing. Don't get me wrong, I love being happy. Who doesn't like being happy? I love being happy. But happiness is a very conditional thing. My wife comes and brings me Taco Bell. It makes me very happy. Because I asked her, please, can you give me a snack? And she's like, okay, I'll go to the drive-thru. I'm like, yes. And I'm happy. But I'm happy because the condition of that she bought me my Taco Bell. But then, if she didn't, would I be happy still? And that's the beauty of what joy is. Because joy isn't a condition. That if my wife bought me Taco Bell, then I'm joyful. No. The beauty of joy is that we choose to enter into a state that whether or not she brings me Taco Bell, I'm happy she's my wife. I'm happy she's coming home. It's this state that we choose to give in. You see, it's this kindness that actually harnesses and grows this word called joy. Because for Rahab, she was living a life that everyone expected her to live. Go to work, do your job, get paid, live your life. Go to work, do your job, get paid, live your life. No one expected anything else. But Rahab chose to change the trajectory of her life. And the way she changed the trajectory of her life is that she began to show kindness. We may not even be able to say it. We may not be even able to admit it. But this is something that deep inside of us, what we truly want is we want people to show kindness to us. Because it's actually in that kindness that we feel connected. That we get to see that this person is for me and not against me. And that is one of the beautiful things that we see in this story, because we see in the story of Rahab, see, her life changed drastically after she showed kindness to these spies. Her life, not only her life in the moment changed drastically, the spies whom she protected, their lives changed drastically. They didn't die. They survived. And they got to tell Joshua what was in Jericho. But not only did she change her life, not only did she change the spies' lives, she changed the destiny of future generations to come. That she didn't even know it. She probably didn't even know the amount of change that she was going to make because of her act of kindness. She may not have known the influence that she was going to make from generations to come because she chose to act in kindness to these people. Because you see, we read actually in Matthew in the New Testament, when we go through the lineage of Jesus, we actually read and stumble upon the name of Rahab. Because Rahab is actually the mother of probably one of the best men known in the Bible, Boaz. Boaz was the kinsman redeemer. If you know the story of Ruth, and how Boaz took Ruth and became her kinsman redeemer. And then we read that Boaz and Ruth had a son, and their son became the father of who we know now as King David. I wouldn't be able to even imagine if Rahab would have thought that her great-grandchildren would be the future king of Israel. I can't imagine that she knew that her random act of kindness would continue to impact the entire nation that she continued to show kindness to. And in that lineage of what Rahab had done, and we read in the book of Matthew, is that her children had children, her children had children, children had children. And she is actually in the genealogy, in the lineage of the person who showed the greatest kindness to us all, was Jesus. Rahab, the woman on the wall. Rahab, the prostitute that no one will bait a second eye to. Rahab, the person on the wall of Jericho. The Canaanite, the unclean. She is part of the lineage of the man who showed the greatest kindness, Jesus. You see, this is where it changes our lives. Kindness is not something that we think that if I just show you kindness, it's going to be fixed. If I'm going to give you kindness and therefore I expect something back. Kindness isn't this thing that it's this formula that is this trade or that we get to barter. Rather, kindness, as we see through Rahab, through her genealogy, all the way up to Jesus, that we see that kindness changes our lives. See, church, I asked this question. I guess I did have it on being my fault, but I asked this question, is that why should we be kind to people we disagree with? Why should we be kind to the people we disagree with? It's because kindness may not change people's minds, but it can change people's hearts. Why should we be kind to people we disagree with? Is because we know that kindness may not change people's minds, but it can change people's hearts. And that is the reason why we show kindness. It's not about trying to convince you to come to church. It's not that. I actually, that's probably one of the biggest manipulation I really do not like. And I may get scolded by this earlier, but for me, someone has asked, like, Anthony, how do you invite people to church? You're a pastor. I'm sure you invite all these different people to church and all that jazz. And I'm like, well, yes, I do. But more importantly, do I care about the person more? Do I care more about the person whom I'm inviting? Or do I just care that I'm inviting them to church? Because those are two big different things. Is the win? Is the priority that they enter into this church and sit down and listen to us, or is the priority that they feel and experience the love of God? And one of the best ways that, for me, how I've invited people to church or any of these different things is actually not inviting them to church. It's actually inviting them into a relationship. I want to know who they are. I want to know who they are with people, with their friends, with their family. I want them to know me. Because when you look at a text message, and you probably text all your friends, hey, we're going to have this church event, can you come on out, please? And they're like, no, it's okay. Like, hey, our church is going to have this, why don't you come on out? Like, no, it's okay. But then you look at the text messages, and all you read is basically inviting them to church, and you don't have a single text message or a single conversation of asking how their day is. How was work? How much of a headache did your brother or sister give? How stressful has your supervisor have done? How nervous are you that you're going to be a dad? You're going to be a mom? We don't have these conversations. And we wonder why people don't want to see and experience church or experience God. It's because all that they see is that, oh, they just want me out. They just want to see me here, butt on seat, and that's all that matters, and then they forget about me. And that is probably one of the most hurtful things that the church has done, is that we have said that we cared for people. We have said that people are our priority, but all that we cared about is that they're in the building, not part of the church. And that's what Jesus has done. Is that when he came, he saw the people who were broken. He saw the people that were hurt. He saw the people that people thought were unclean. And as the Pharisees looked at them and said, yeah, don't be with them, Jesus. Jesus says, no, these are the people I said I'm here for. These are the people that need to know that they are loved. And that is why we have the church. Is to show kindness the way Jesus has shown kindness. Is to show kindness the way Rahab showed kindness. Because it is that way that when we show kindness, it's not about changing their minds, but is that their hearts are touched and changed because they have seen people, they have experienced when a group of people, maybe even just one person, would just love them. And that's how powerful kindness is. All it takes is one person to show kindness. All it takes is one random act of kindness to go out that would change someone's day, that can change someone's perspective, that can change even how I view the world, even how you view the world. It changes everything. And I want to read to you this poem from Mother Teresa. And as you read this, and as I read this, I just want you to allow the words to soak in. People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some false friends and some true enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and frank, people may cheat you. Be honest and frank anyway. What you spend years building, someone could destroy overnight. Build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow. Do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it may never be enough. Give the world the best you've got anyway. You see, in the final analysis, it is between you and your God. It was never between you and them anyway. Kindness transforms our hearts. Not because we try to convince people. It's not about changing their minds. But kindness changes the world because it changes our hearts. And today, as we take our faith steps in the fall, I want to encourage you. What is your next step of faith to show kindness to someone? Maybe it's to get out of your way. Maybe it's actually to text someone that you've been asking about church or whatever, actually how their day is. Not inviting them to a church event, but inviting them to coffee and seeing how they are. Maybe today you're asking, how can I show kindness when I've never received kindness, Anthony? And I'm sorry if you're one of those people who have never experienced kindness. I'm sorry that the church has not shown kindness. I'm sorry that Christians who claim that they love God have stopped showing kindness. But that's not going to stop us. It's not going to stop this church. It's not going to stop these people right now to show kindness. Because we want to be the wave runners, the ripple makers, whatever you want to call it. We want to be then the people who start this endless cycle of kindness to others, because we want to see that change in our lives. We want to see that change in our families' lives, in our friends' lives. We want to see that change. So guess what? We are going to be that change. And we're going to be that change not because we are the best in the land, but because Jesus showed us kindness. That while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That there was nothing that we could have done to deserve, nothing that we could have done to say we earned the right. But just because Jesus loved us, that he died for us. Because he refused to see heaven without you. He refused to have a relationship that you and I cannot be truly a part of. He refused and came down. Because it's not about others anyway.